Making a video. Yeah, I don't exactly know where I'm going with this one. Has something to do with, yeah, brain. And why? Why these questions that seem to me to be like sort of obvious. Sort of the diagram of what we're doing here has always been, the outline of it. It's kind of, you sort of can get, there's this game to be played. Usually if you're just overtly selfish, you're going to play it badly. You always have to be sort of mindful of the risk equations, and you have to kind of know that there's other people involved, and you really don't want to fuck up somebody else's life, and blah blah blah. And so there's this risk element dribbled on all of the ice cream sundaes. Well, everything you do, right? You always have to assess. Like it's almost like it's like somebody cooked your food who you're just not sure of. You know what I mean? You're just like, I don't know, if I want to eat something they made kind of thing, but you're just not sure they could have done it right. They didn't roll it in some, whatever, smallpox or something. Anyway, and so that's sort of what life is. Yeah, life is just this kind of an equation between, well, early life, let me say, just this sort of just measuring risk. And not only risk to yourself, but risk of doing something stupid for which you will get yelled at and humiliated and whatnot. And then you sort of get, at least for me anyway, the Star Trek metaphor was a good one. The contrast between being a logical person and being a kind of reckless person. And sometimes you need to make the decision. You gotta do that shit or get off the pot thing. So it's kind of good to be the reckless guy when, both choices look kind of messy, and it's going to take years and years of analysis to figure out which choice to make. So then you kind of need to be a Kirk when, you just gotta do something. You can't wait around to figure out the right answer. And but most of the time, it's going to be the right thing to do. It's just going to be to say whoa, stand back, and say, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this because I'm in a shitty mood today? Am I doing it because I'm in a good mood today? Especially if you're a woman, you got that whole period thing. So you gotta wonder, like every, 5 days in the month, you gotta say, yeah, well, shit, am I just thinking that because, it's that time? So mood is sort of like an extension. Personal mood is sort of like an extension of the philosophical differences between people, in the sense that there's something different. It might not be a major difference, but it's a difference, and it just kind of, it just bleeds into the calculations, so that we can both agree on two things being the same thing, but it's just like one day red is going to be redder, than it is on some other day. And that's kind of how it is with people in these arguments, is they're leveled, the meaning, the substance, the importance they give to things. Yeah, importance is kind of a good word. Me likey that one. I wrote down some stuff, but I don't know where I put it. I thought it was on this piece of paper, but this piece of paper doesn't seem to have much written on it. So yeah, we're sort of bleeding into this free will conversation. And the fact that our will does change day to day. How a problem is given to us, just how you even word a sentence sometimes will decide how you'll answer the sentence. Just change the wording a little bit and you'll have a different answer, even though the questions sound like they're asking the same thing. They're not the same based on how you reflexively react to the word. What order, what filter it goes through. So yeah, and that's really all we are, is a package of that. So I won't go through there is no such thing as a free thing or a will thing. There's just this ordering of priorities, importances. Yeah, so on that subject, I guess I could go to a video clip. So I did see a video by, wrong mouse, I really am tired. Stunningly tired. I do have to find a new vitamin. The ones I'm taking aren't quite making it. But anyway, Logic Rolls the Dice did a little video response to Flyora, who was critiquing or complaining about, I guess, Hazy, who has, who has, I guess in some ways is defensive of, I don't know what he's defensive of. I mean, I guess he's defensive of the actions of people who are preposterously stupid, which I guess I would sort of say, in theory, there's a certain, that's I guess a certain subject I'd like to get to sometime. Because you can't blame people, yes, for being what they are. They are what they are. They do what they do. Somehow their machine was able to do that. But some of that you have to just say, wait a minute though, to do that they had to leap right over the truth. They had to walk like right through it. They had to take out a pair of scissors and actually cut the truth's nuts off. There's no way they could just make the excuse that I'm just doing what I'm doing. No, they had to be of kind of a malicious and malignant intent. I mean, their intent, their very essence had to be just oozing shithead for them to do that. So it's like the first thing they wanted to do on Earth wasn't, don't be a shithead. That wasn't one of the rules they're being ordered or filtered by. Don't be a colossal asshole. Not relevant to them. And that's sort of important. It sort of is. In terms of having empathy or regard. Because obviously if they're not going to care about cutting your nuts off, why should you care if they cut their own off? Sort of something like that. Anyway, I mean, you certainly shouldn't make excuse making for them or sympathy for their brokenness any kind of priority relative to caring for their victims first. That's a certainty. Anyway.
Atheism is, to me, atheism is just the same as rejectionism. It's rejecting life. I mean, atheism, rejectionism is all, that word's been around for longer.
Rejectionism has been around for longer? Okay, I can say that in my whole life I've never heard of a rejectionist. So he was just saying that atheism is somehow not a proper word and using this rejectionism word. I'm saying, well, what does this have to do with anything? I mean, and rejectionism is kind of like that verby thing happening again, in a sense that it's a generic word for what you do to all kinds of things. It's like somebody being called a skeptic. What is that? What, you're skeptical about everything? It's a stupid thing to label yourself, as a general thing. I mean, the last thing I would say is I'm a rejectionist. No, I really like 99% of science and lots of things I say, yeah, bring it on, really good. So I can't make any sense out of that. It just doesn't say anything. So yeah, if you want to find a new word, antinatalism always seems stupid to me first, because natal is always, to me anyway, it's tied to the whole process of suckling and nurturing babies. It's not just the birth of babies, it's tied to the raising of babies, and I'm not opposed to raising babies once you've made one. So that doesn't even work. I mean, so it's more like I'd rather be an anti-procreationist or anti-creationist. And my whole point is that these words just talk about kind of human behavior, because we don't really talk about animals procreating, in any real sense, or creating life, or doing any of these things intentionally. And certainly that's the object here, is to get at the mechanism, and the only one that can get at the mechanism intentionally, the only one that can do anything intentionally about any of this stuff is us. So you have to kind of be anti the thing that's causing it. And the thing that's causing it is the very nature of the function of the DNA molecule, so that's why I took life and put it backwards, and so I think it's a perfectly appropriate title. So anyway, yeah, but fuck you, I'm not a rejectionist. Call yourself something stupid if you like. I mean, come up with your own stupid name if you want, but until you come up with a better name than that, yeah, I'm not doing that. Yeah, fuck you. Stupid. Unnecessary. I don't even know what the hell that was even for. I just even don't know what the point of it was. I can't figure it out. Well, anyway, so later he argues about how, something about Hazy and his defeatism. Or whatever you might want to call it. But it seems like a lot of people go through these stages. I go through them. Sometimes it all seems like a hard burden for nothing. And other times you just start thinking about how if nobody does anything, then nothing gets done. And so that's a real issue. Somebody's got to do it, kind of thing. And there's just not, doesn't look like a whole lot, somebody else, a whole army of something else isn't going to do it. So this is one of those circumstances where logically you have to add it up, you have to do the math and have to say, well, there's no soldiers in the army, so I guess I have to sign up because I think the war needs to be fought. That kind of thing. So anyway, I don't know if there's much else I wanted to get to. Just beyond the fact that it's this, I think the idea of communicating with people and being able to communicate with them is possible. But it just has to be done differently in a different kind of language. So I guess that was part of what I was thinking, is that I'm really going to have to start applying a different kind of language to how I speak. And, it's like the modern mystic. And, well, I could, there's different things I could go to. I can't do it with the wrong mouse, though. There was some video that Thou Art Thou posted by some guy who doesn't seem nearly as wacky, but Tam. That's a really bad name. But anyway, so he was giving some sort of presentation. They got sort of to the hard problem and just were talking a little bit about how consciousness functions. And some of that wasn't too bad, but the questions from the audience were all the loop-de-doo, quantum, bring up quantum eraser in the circumstance of human personality or human identity or human thought just seems so ridiculous. And you're just saying, well, wow, that narrative it should be really easy to break that kind of silly narrative. But it's just, the world is just so full of nonsense and mush. So anyway, the modern mystic has been doing a couple of these videos from camp, and he's always talking in circles, which is sort of irritating. So the scientists of Oxford University say a world first form of research shows infants may be far more sensitive to pain than adults. Which is just kind of funny. When you read this whole thing, it's just, and then he goes on the subject of the eye. See, I mean, I wouldn't just worry too much about this eye thing. It's, it's just understanding the brain thing. It's not like we're not individuals. We are individuals. There's just no doubt about our individuality. We're individual, stupid machines. That's clear. What's programming us is individual circumstances. So, I just don't think I don't think it's rational to think that my consciousness is being generated through some mechanism that has much of anything to do with other people, except that they fill material space and do things, and say things. And yeah, I hear what they do and they say, but it's not happening in any other way. So clearly my programming is just unique to this bombardment of circumstances. But it's still a brain, and it's still a brain with an identity. Their brains are still their brains, and that's why they don't work, is because they're their brains. If they were my brain, they would work. And because they're their brains, that's why they're not working. Yeah, so they need to be impacted and influenced by the environment, me. This piece of the environment needs to influence them with new stimuli that in some way gets their vocabulary fixed so they can actually see the context correctly. So anyway, but this was a whole science thing, and it was just so stupid because the research is juvenile. So yeah, it's a juvenile research on babies. But they do an MRI where they poke a couple of babies when you read the story. Well, I don't have the story here. Well, maybe I have it here. So yeah, so you should always use some dramatic imagery to go with all scientific papers, of course. So last year, a review of neonatal pain management intensive care found that although these babies experience an average of 11 painful procedures per day, 60% do not receive any kind of pain medication. So I wonder what they're putting in the category of painful procedures a day. But anyway, when you see what they really did, the brain scans were taken as babies were poked in the bottom of their feet and compared the scans with adults exposed to the same stimulus. The findings were published. Well, they really shouldn't publish findings this silly. So anyway, I mean, it's idiotic to assume you know what pain is made out of based on what kind of picture you see in a brain in the first place. Just because obviously pain is a reflex, and it's a reflex triggered by very specific circumstances. So first it has its own set of neurons, that have to be reached before you'll receive any pain, and they have to be wiggled or triggled or jiggled in just the right way for pain to be of any kind of intense nature. So it's really the whole thing. Your pain network is based on your sensation network, and sensations aren't pain. So the fact that when somebody stimulates you there's going to be stuff happening in your brain does not mean that stuff is pain. I think this is almost so silly. You're saying, no, scientists didn't do something like this, did they? No. People that went to college did this? Oof. Anyway, so this is just an example of what you're fighting, though, because clearly these people have agendae. And that's why they would do this mush, is because they have agendae. And they don't want to concede to some kind of like logical factors like babies have no use for pain. They have no functional ability to do anything about it. They only have one response to any stimulus, and that is cry or don't cry, fundamentally. And they certainly have no practical ability to change their environment. They can only change the attitude of the person caregiving, and they're so incoherent to anything real. So painful experiences, having pain in experience, through experience, these are things used to condition one's brain. And babies just aren't in an environment where it's useful for them to do any hard conditioning. If they started conditioning themselves to the world based on this closed world of control by mommy, then they would have little hope of doing anything practical once they got into the real world. The real world is where they're going to get conditioned, where it's going to mean something, and that's the world where they're really going to feel it. Then you could just go with all the personal anecdotal evidence, all the observed evidence of, the kids, the 10 million kids who fall down, cut the fuck out of themselves, don't even know anything happened until somebody else says, "You have a cut," and then all of a sudden, hysteria. I mean, come on. Anyway, but this isn't important enough for me to worry about, but I mean, it's just an example of how this agenda thing creeps into all these conversations, and the agenda thing is just made out of the word thing that people have. They have put much higher emphasis on certain concepts and certain expressions, certain like the certain aesthetics, certain ways they think the world is prettier, or more beautiful, and they think it's a beautiful thing when everybody loves the little baby. They have a little thing for the little babies. I might go for kittens, but babies, no chance. Yeah, I'd feed babies to kittens. I really, if a kitten really, really was begging for a baby, I would give it one. I mean, it's almost like a bug, almost. But see just that very expression, the very fact that this thing doesn't make me feel anything except you. That's gross. Is part of the condition difference that allows us to see the world differently. See, because now I can see the world, I can see past that thing, right through it like it's invisible, and I can see the truth and reality and all that kind of crap. And I'm not going to get distracted by this little thing that's going to get my way. Now, if you put kittens on top of like Adolf Hitler's head and You know, Mussolini and all the bad, like even Ronald Reagan had a little kitten and shoulder, and he scratched his little head. Yeah, well then this might fuck me up. You know, and I might not be able to properly identify things if they have little kittens on them. I don't know why somebody doesn't do that. That should be like a great subliminal thing. Like you wouldn't even have to do it subliminally. Just put kittens. You know, just put kittens in the picture. Like if I was running a political campaign, I just find some excuse to put a little kitten on top of my name. You know, right on top of the last letter or something. Just little kitten. Hi, I'm a little kitten. You know, that's got to be a winner. Yeah, but see, it's cheating. So cheating. See, the word cheating pops in my head. That's cheating, Gary. See, so that's where my will is different than somebody else's will, because as soon as I know, okay, that's cheating, Gary. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, alright, I won't do it, it's cheating. See, that's the difference between me and somebody who would cheat. Yeah. Anyway, so I do want to do something new and different, and so I'm going to work on that. Got to do some writing, got to do this, got to do that. So I'll get to all this crap, and yeah, for a new and better world. But yeah, to the point of, you know, how futile is the cause, how futile is, I just don't buy into that stuff. First, I believe there is probably a way of saying it that's just so damn good it wins with everybody. Like, I think somebody can tell a joke that really does make everyone laugh. It's just such a good joke. Like, you can't not laugh. I just think there's a way of explaining reality, like putting it in the right order, the little pieces, and where it just goes to somebody's brain, they just go, oh, yeah, fuck. I can't, you know, can't argue with any of that. You know, it's just solid. So I think that is doable. And, you know, I think if you make a documentary and with enough kittens in it, you know, in the right places, yeah, you can do this. So anyway, so, poo on the naysayers. Secondly, there's no other fight to fight. I mean, you can do this modern mystic thing where you can pretend, you know, you could go camping and, you know, whatever, watch cartoons and blah, 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 and just kind of saunter through whatever's left of your life. You know, whatever days you have left on this little shithole, you can just piss them away. You know, talking in circles. But yeah, I just say that's just a failed strategy. It's just waste. Waste is the obscenity. So don't waste opportunity to improve conditions on Earth, if possible. I mean, it's hard, you know, because yeah, this is all like I feel. It's just like I'm tired. I just want to go to bed. I don't want to do this. So, you know, go to couch. Be accurate. But anyway, off to couchdom. Yeah. So anyway, that's probably enough. Yeah, I think I got to what I wanted to say. I'm just working on stuff rolling in my head. It's rolling around in there. I might come up with something brilliant and maybe not, but we shall see. Or not. And such.